Are we done on that film, Scott?
Yes, I don't think of anything more to say about that, so crash onwards to round things out with A History of Violence.
Yes, A History of Violence, based on the 1997 graphic novel of the same name by John Wagner and Vince Locke, and adapted for the screen by Joss Olson and directed by David Cronenberg. It begins with a couple of drifters, Greg Brick and the wonderfully bevoiced Steve McHattie, committing an act of gratuitous violence at a small Midwestern motel. This bellicose duo will soon find their way to the small, sleepy town of Millbrook, Indiana, where we will also find Tom Stall, Viggo Mortensen, living the idyllic small-town life with his wife Edie, Maria Bello, and his 2 children. Each day after family breakfast, Tom makes his way into work, a small diner on the town's main street. You know, that sort of place where everything seems to be as you imagine it's been for approximately 50 years now. One day will be radically different though. Into his diner after closing time come the duo from the opening scene. Like a latter-day Dick Hickok and Perry Smith, as eager to hurt people as they are to rob the business. Despite Tom readily offering up all of the money he has, the duo intend to murder one of his employees to demonstrate just how repugnant they are. But using a coffee pot as a weapon, Tom incapacitates one before a brief scuffle in which the 2 robbers are dead and the minorly injured diner owner is a national hero, at least for the length of the news cycle. His heroics have brought him unexpected attention though, and Ed Harcy's Carl Fogarty, a made man in the Irish Mafia in Philadelphia, visits the diner, claiming to know that Tom is in fact not Tom, but a mobster named Joey Cusack. Tom swears this to be a case of mistaken identity, but when Fogarty's brief campaign of intimidation ends in gore and death, the truth is revealed and Tom/Joey Toy must go to Philadelphia to deal with his history of violence and possibly lose everything dear to him as a result. The violence depicted in a film called A History of Violence is almost matter of fact. Feral, brutal, grotesque, but over in moments. There's no slow motion, no stylistic shooting, no lingering shots of the hero roundhouse kicking an opponent or emptying a magazine. Though during the small moments of violence we're brought into it, complicit in it as we, the audience, want to see these villains punished. The shots that linger, though briefly, are on the results. The dead bodies, the changed or ended lives, the effects of the violence. And while there certainly is gore, and A History of Violence is very much an adult film, there's a perhaps surprising lack of damaged bodies from one of the progenitors of the body horror genre. Indeed, David Cronenberg's direction and stylings are quite subtle and light of hand, and that plays a large part in making it unclear for a long time if Tom is Joey, or if it truly is a case of mistaken identity. Just don't think about the title. Bit of a giveaway that, but the charisma and likeability of Viggo Mortensen help much in this regard too, of course. He never looks 100% comfortable in a small Indiana town, but is that because he dreamed of something bigger and regrets the small scale of his life and his achievements? Or is it because he truly doesn't belong there? For 2/3 of the film it's ambiguous, but the biggest disappointment I have with the film is that the question is answered too early. With a final act in Philadelphia that feels quite generic, and a frankly less than stellar performance from William Hurt, notably lacking in the menace that Ed Harris brought to the film's middle portion. That final act also takes Mortensen away from the similarly excellent Bello. As an aside, apart from Prisoners, I think the only time I've seen her in the past decade is Irresistible the Fifth Wave, and that's criminal. Though the film at least reunites them and finishes on uncertainty, and in an ambiguous meeting of eyes between the two, leaving us to the question of whether or not his history of violence is indeed history, or whether it will cost him all that he fought for. There's fun to be had here too with Howard Shore's score, which begins in Millbrook with strains that call to mind the carefree days of the Hobbits in the Shire and the Fellowship of the Ring score that he also wrote, before transitioning into something broodier and darker as Tom's life begins to fall apart. Mortensen and Cronenberg would go on to even greater things in their next collaboration, Eastern Promises, but A History of Violence is a taut and rewarding thriller, let down only by its need to resolve the mystery. How much more satisfying would it have been to never answer the question of Tom's identity? Yeah,
I could see that happen. I could see that perhaps being a a more intriguing ending, but I've got to say I'm very happy with what's been served up to me with History of Violence. I think it's a very great film. Another one of these films that I knew intellectually that I liked, because I remember liking it, but I couldn't remember quite how much I liked it until I sat down and watched it again. It's like, oh yes, this is actually really good. To agree, it might have been Cronenberg's first attempt at a sort of straight story-esque Lynch one, because it doesn't feel an awful lot like the kind of stereotypical Cronenberg experience, apart from a couple of shots of the aftermath of the violence, like you say. I really, really liked it. I think Viggo Mortensen was a revelation in this. He's really good. William Hurt's, I kind of agree. The last act's a bit flat, and largely that's because William Hurt's there, and he's kind of set up to fail anyway, because it's a character that's parachuted in at the last minute. For those
maybe
ones.
One mention of before that or something, I think.
Yeah, and there's no real backstory to the relationship that he's got with Viggo Mortensen's character. There's never really feels like much of a connection between them at any point in it as well, which I suppose is kind of part of the point, but it also doesn't really help. So yeah, that does perhaps not match up to the quality of the rest of the film, but the two acts that go in front of it are so good that I'm willing to forgive it a slight misstep in the final one. That I still really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was a hugely well adapted from the John Wagner story. Yeah, it's also very stylishly looking film as well. Most of it's shot very well. The brief spurts of action are really well handled and nice and crunchy. Yeah, I think there's an awful lot to like in here, and I would certainly recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think Eastern Promises is an even better film, but that doesn't mean this isn't also a great film. I really enjoy this film.
Yeah.
I think that final act stops it being a bit more special. It's just the sort of setting and just like what happens. You know exactly what's going to happen. There's no surprise in it.
Yeah.
And because there's no character payoff between William Hurt and Viggo Mortensen, it doesn't really do much, that final act. So the whole thing just feels quite flat.
Yeah.
Whereas like that 2 or 3 minutes at the end of the final act when he comes back to the house.
Yeah.
There's more in those 3 minutes than there's in the preceding 20 or 30. So I'm assuming that that's still broadly following the graphic novel. But I like the idea of like, if you don't really know, or at least maybe his family are never quite sure.
Yeah.
There's something appealing about the idea of not just packaging that up.
Yeah, and particularly given the sort of chemistry and the talent between Maria Bello and Viggo Mortensen, that relationship does feel underexplored because they work so well together. And so yes, I can see that at least. Yes.
So yeah, or I mean, there's a few things that the way that the Carl Fogarty arc comes to an end it's an inflection point of the film. It's where the truth comes out, and if you maybe stretch that a bit more, because Ed Harris is so menacing in this film, as he so often is. Even when he's like playing a good guy, there's still something, not always menace, but there's something like a power about him. Whereas William Hurt, there's nothing between them. Whereas you establish quite quickly, even if you haven't been told about his eye, there's just maybe some more chemistry or something. There's immediately something between Viggo Mortensen and Ed Harris there. That's like, it's just gone with that one a wee bit more. There's so many wee things, like just slight tweaks here and there, just elevated that wee bit further. And I'm vaguely frustrated by that because it's like, just wee when. I've no idea what that noise was meant to indicate. Sorry. You just do one or two wee things differently, and I just think you just have a better product. I mean, and it's only like a 95-minute film. It's really, really tight, really well edited, and it's not any longer than it needs to be. But it's still, even that, any conversation with William Hurt adds nothing.
Yeah.
So again, it's another one of those films that I'm vaguely frustrated. Not that it's bad, it's just like, it could be better. Yeah. It's really good, but it could be better.
How dare you only be very good?
Yes. You utter swine.